Our panel dealing with mental health is looking at the additional challenges that defense practitioners have on a daily basis with clients with serious mental health issues, with intellectual developmental disabilities, with
services from the community to the jail, from the jail back to the community, and how attorneys can effectively get those services for their clients and how a team can help to make those services a reality. For our panel this afternoon, we have Kama Harris, who's the Director of Policy and Education at the Texas Judicial Commission on Mental Health. She comes to us with an experience as a public defender and with the Capital Regional Public Defender's Office, and has been a lead on the Adult Mental Health Bench Book from JCMH, and also recently directed JCMH's Judicial Mental Health Summit. We also have with us Nikki Shrivastava. I knew I was going to mess it up. I apologize. Resource attorney with the Bexar County MAC. She works with all of their attorneys to provide the resources they need, be it understanding the mental health issues, understanding the requirements of Chapter 46B, 46C of the Code of Criminal Procedure with competency or insanity issues. And her experience is not just at the MAC, but also having been in the field as a public defender for the Colorado State Public Defender's Office and a Padilla attorney for Neighborhood Defender Service. Rounding this out, because it's not just attorneys working with clients, but it's also the social workers who, frankly, are a force multiplier for attorneys handling these cases. They're able to make the connections with clients, with the providers in the community, with clients' families, to help them understand that this is not attorneys who just want to dig into the family's dirty laundry, but to understand the realities that clients have dealt with growing up, the stories the families understood and frankly often been afraid to share or embarrassed to share. And so we have from Nikki's office, Laurie Gallo, who's a social worker at the Bexar County MAC, that makes this a reality for panel attorneys in Bexar County. And then we also have Christina Sanders, who leads the social work department of the North Hill Country Public Defender's Office. Chris has spent 25 years working in various social work and criminal justice roles and brings all of that to the services she provides to their office's attorneys, having been a mental health probation officer, having worked with mental health and drug courts, having looked at jail diversion, having worked with reentry and all the challenges someone faces when they go from being incarcerated in the jail or in the prison system back to the community, and working as a benefits coordinator as well to help people get, again, all the services they need to succeed in the community. With our presentation today, we're going to start looking at the statewide scope of what exists, what's out there, and then we will move to how all of this really comes into the system to make it work with attorneys, and then the social workers with making the linkage and getting all the information so then attorneys can go back and effectively advocate and put a defendant's life into context. Make things make sense, to argue for just results and help people eventually get out of the justice system. With that, let me pass it to Kama.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you all for being here after lunch. So my name is Kama Harris. I'm with the Texas Judicial Commission on Mental Health. Do we have a clicker? Looks like it's over here. Nice. Okay, so I'm really going to build off of what Angelica said earlier today. And I have some questions. I think you already might know the answers. So, oh, there's me. What's the largest mental health provider in Texas? Do we know? Harris County what? Jail. Yes, I said Texas jails. It is Harris County Jail. And I do have prizes. And so I thought that was, obviously that's very interesting. And then 1 in 3 people in our jails have a mental health disorder of some kind, which can lead to this $450 million a year in jail costs for people with mental illness. So that is, if money talks, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money there. But why might this be? So we've heard about it on a individual level, but I'm going to try to look at it from a more systemic level. So there was a hearing in 2018, and let me start there. 2018, both high courts sat together for the first time ever, and they heard testimony from experts, attorneys, people with lived experience on all of the issues happening in our criminal justice system, dealing with mental health and intellectual disabilities. And through this hearing, they created the Judicial Commission on Mental Health, which is what I do. So part of our mission is to engage and empower the court systems through collaboration, education, and leadership to improve the lives of individuals with mental health needs, substance use disorders, and intellectual disabilities. So I get to improve the system and make it better for people, right? And so some of the things that were uncovered during this hearing, obviously before, but came out in the hearing, were these complex laws that Texas has. Our mental health laws are all over different codes, all scattered throughout. You're going from 46B in the Code of Criminal Procedure to 573 in the Health and Safety Code. They're everywhere. And not only that, you have different entities working in different systems. So even though one client is passing through from criminal court to civil court, even though it's a forensic hearing, you have all these agencies that are needing to work together that don't know they need to work together. These complex laws, the lack of coordination, what else are we supposed to do, right? The alternatives are unknown. And we saw a lot of blame. Everybody was pointing fingers at everybody else. So the local mental health authorities are saying, the judges send us too many people to competency. And the judges are like, I'm just following the law. They don't have enough beds. If we can take those ideas and come together as a group, we can probably find solutions, right? And so that is my entire job, and I have the best job in the world. So basically, mental illness has statutory definitions, but they can be actually a lot more narrow than you think they are. So mental illness is this illness, disease, or condition that's going to impair a person's thought, perception of reality, emotional process, or judgment. And here are your top 3 serious mental illnesses: this bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and schizophrenia. So it can also include other things: anxiety disorders, eating disorders, personality disorders. There are many different types of disorders. So you're not always looking for the same thing when you're trying to see, does my client have a mental illness? And then let's add on intellectual disabilities. So this can come in many different forms, and as we saw from Angelica's presentation, identification can be hard even for the people who are there every day and have the illness, right? Because it comes in so many different forms. I've heard that if you've met a person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Everyone is different. And so in Texas, there's more than 500,000 adults and children with IDD. And I say IDD, intellectual disability is the new term for MR. So we don't say MR anymore. I know they're removing it from statutes. And then developmental disability can be alongside or a subset of intellectual disability. So it's all kind of grouped together, but it can be parsed apart. And you'll find that some of your the help in the community is only for DD and not ID. So the groups, the organizations might parse apart who can have it, but we're going to lump it all together when we talk about it. It's quite complex. 2 things I want to point out. One is this diagnosis before the age of 18. I'm sure you've all ran into this, but a lot of our mental health or our intellectual disability services can't be reached if you're diagnosed after the age of 18. Additionally, traumatic brain injury does not fall under this category. So a lot of our competency clients who are incompetent because they were in a car wreck after the age of 18 and have part of their brain missing, sorry, you don't fall under IDD, can't be restored to competency, maybe you don't qualify for civil commitment. Where are we? We're stuck. There's a gap in the law. So with that good news, I'm going to get off that soapbox and talk about how I need to pace. I'm sorry. The sequential intercept model. Thank you. So this is how I look at our justice system. It's like a timeline as someone would move through the system. This public health community services, if you can't tell when this was created, not by my organization, but at PRA, they started here, right? When does someone interact with our justice system? And then they're like, oh, well, we can do stuff ahead of that. Actually, we can do stuff ahead of this. So these have all been added on. This keeps being added to as different ways to not only move through the system, but how do you move out of the system? How do we get people out of our judicial system and not through the judicial system? Which is why these public health and community services boxes kind of wrap around. We want those to wrap around our clients and say, let's get out of this timeline and into the services in our community, making our community safer, making people with mental illness healthier, wellness is a goal. Oh, this is my scary slide. Okay, I love charts. Love charts, super detail-oriented. Procedures are my jam. I made the following chart. So it's based on the sequential intercept model, and it lays out for you every different mental health type of law on the sequential intercept model. So if we're going to talk about competency, where's my competency? That competency, which is huge, right? Is just this little box right here. That's all competency is. So there's so many complex and niche little laws that go into this, which is why we are here. So systemically, the Judicial Commission on Mental Health is here to help you. Everything we do is free. All of our resources are free. We have a summit each year. It was just last week. Completely free. It is also will be online. All of our sessions have been recorded online. Still can get CLE credit for them. You can get credit for last year's sessions if you watch them online, and they are immensely helpful. We try to organize by sequential intercept model so you can really dig in to the part of the system that you are involved with. But so that collaboration, education, leadership that I talked about in the beginning, so these are kind of where our resources are focused. So we have a legislative research committee. This committee makes legislative proposals and gives them to the Texas Judicial Council, who then gives them to the legislature. And it's our third session of doing this. I'm happy to say that some of our bills have passed. Senate Bill 1164 was one of the ones that our committee came up with and put forth. We can't lobby, but we can give ideas and help understand the concepts. So these other things, this court collaborative, these are things just that are meant to bring people together and fix some of the issues. And I'll go deeper into sim mapping in just a second. So we have that education, the annual summit, in person, online, recordings afterwards, bench books. So he said earlier, Bill said that I author our bench book. This is what that is. So this is a 350-page book that I have the pleasure of writing for you after every legislative session. I add to it and I update the laws, and it's a lot, but it goes through each mental health law on that big chart we just saw and breaks it down. Gives you real life resources, gives you other resources to, the QR codes you can get to and other resources to, I like the word resources, and we're going to connect them all together. This is one of the prizes I have. So, good sir, you've won yourself a bench book. We also have the juvenile law version of it. Same thing, goes through the sequential intercept model with all of those different laws and breaks them down. And it's written not only for judges, but for attorneys, for peace officers, for social workers. How do these laws work? How are they supposed to work? How do they work in different counties? And is it actually working? What might be improved? Some of my favorite stuff in there is the legislative intent. So we have Professor Brian Shannon on our commission, and he has helped for many years write some of the laws that are now law. And so he will give you the tea on, oh, the competency log used to be this, but then no one was using it, so we lowered the standard, and now it's this. It's so fascinating. But all of that good stuff is in there. And once you understand where it came from, how we got here makes a lot of sense. But how we get out of it, how we make our communities better, is still quite complex. So we have this thing called technical assistance. That means you call us, we help you. When I joined this, I was like, I don't know much about computers. Not computers. It goes through, we will handhold you through whatever you need. So if you need some education law training, we can come in and I can spend a day with 1622, right? We can talk through that procedure. And the same for competency and mental health courts, all those things. You've already heard about the bench books, but there's some other resources there as well. Lots of different reports. This report is our most recent. It is our biennial report, so every 2 years. This tells you what we did and what is coming up. So if you want more info on any of these projects, it's actually written quite nicely in here. And there's pictures of some of you. Katie Jo's on this. Yep. So our video library, that not only is all of our summit presentations, but it's also recordings that we've done separately. So if someone has a great idea, let's make a video and put it on here. Everything we do is to help you, to help the counties. We talked about legislative initiatives. This expert consulting and peer networking, I love, because if I don't know the answer, I can find you somebody who does. And I can find you a county that has started the program that you want to start and done it with no money, right? So we can connect you with people who are doing the things you want to be doing. And I love, that's such a joyful part of our work that we do. So let me find you someone to help you through the issues that your county's going through. And then these mapping workshops. So this targeted support, here's that connections I just said, judge to judge. Sometimes it's harder. Let's say, for example, maybe a sheriff isn't on board with some ideas. Finding another sheriff who does this in their community and is having success is very helpful to just discussing those common problems, trusting, another sheriff does this, let's make it work. On the mapping, so there's sim mapping, so that model, the sequential intercept model, going through those and looking at what resources do we have in each of those intercepts and how are they connected. But then there's my favorite one, which is your procedural mapping. So it lays out different procedures and says, how does our 1622 work? So this is my 1622 procedure guide. It looks overwhelming. If you break it down, it's not. You can literally click on these things. It'll pull up the document that you want. You click on the code. It takes you to the code you need. And it walks you through what is required in law. So here's an example of Bexar County, how they took that chart and made it their own, right? They say, in Bexar County, we do it this way. You need to email Linda, and then you need to send it over here to Jan. You can make it anything you want to make it, and we'll just help guide you through it, provide the foundation. And so this is one of my fun success stories, merely because I love procedural charts. So whatever you need, whatever your county needs, let us help you for free. That's why we're here. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kama. And then 1622 is a great spot to move forward to, talking about representation and what do you do with the client that has serious mental health or intellectual and or developmental delays.
Wow, that is a really big picture of me. That's lovely. I'm also a pacer too, Kema, so we're in the same boat. But yeah, like Bill said earlier, my name is Nikki Srivastava. I used to be a public defender in a rural jurisdiction where I represented a lot of people with mental health issues and some of them with severe competency issues. So my background really comes from that, and having gotten a chance to work at a more urban county like Bear County to work with a social worker. So something I like to talk about first is where I work right now, which is Managed Assigned Counsel, MAC for sure, short. We've been hearing a lot about PDO's offices and Managed Assigned Counsel. So for those who don't know, MAC is a model that's responsible for appointing and making sure we have people who can effectively represent the criminally accused who are brought through the justice system. Our mission is to support ethical, effective, and zealous client-centered representation. This is not just an attorney guiding another attorney, but we have social workers, case managers, a lot of people on our teams to make sure that attorney is providing everything they can for their client. So we do have a specialized mental health division team made up of mental health resources. We have a mental health attorney, we have a social worker, and a case manager. So how does our referral process work? Well, we have a lovely website that is up and running. It's pretty easy to manage. But for our panel attorneys who wish to make sure they have just like even a consultation to see whether or not their client fits to any programs, we will ask them to go through this referral system. It's really easy. You go to the part for our resource that says resources for our attorneys. I'll take you directly to how literally step by step, we'll hold your hand through the referral process. We love to make sure that that part is as easy and smooth as possible. So first thing the attorney needs to do is talk to their client and gain permission to do this. MAC is part of the defense team, so we fall under that attorney-client confidentiality and privilege. So you don't have to worry as a panel attorney, or your panel attorneys don't have to worry that they're having to get like informed consent to break that, because that's not what we are. We're part of the defense team. You have to complete a short referral. We'll link you right to it. And then our MAC team will go over it and determine, okay, do we need to coordinate a visit with this client? Do we need to go to the jail and coordinate it? If it's in the jail, we're got to make this person our top priority because they're in custody. Then they'll complete an intake with your client, asking more in-depth questions about what they need and what services they need to have. And then we'll reach out to the attorneys and we will talk about the appropriate treatment plan. And I'll go into the services of an attorney in a little bit more detail, but I'm going to take you with me to the San Luis Valley. I don't know if this actually is a picture of the San Luis Valley. I just picked it from what Microsoft Word said I could pick without any copyright issues. So, disclaimer for anyone who thinks they can sue me over this photo. But I used to practice in the San Luis Valley, which is in the southwest region of Colorado, New Mexico's backyard. And it is 5 out of the 6 poorest counties are in that area. And I used to practice in one county called Monte Vista. It's really small. 1 library, 1 school, maybe 2 grocery stores, and then that part that's getting gentrified, right? So there's no public transportation. There's 1 behavioral health group center. There's not a lot to be there. So you know that every officer knows everyone. Everyone knows everyone's family drama, their family tree, who's new to town, who's coming back to town, all that fun stuff. And I had a client who I'm going to call JH. Now, JH has been known in Monte Vista to be the crazy one. He would often get arrested because his ex-girlfriend, who also had her own set of issues, would keep calling the police on him because she thought his mental illness meant criminality. And the Monte Vista Police Department kept putting JH in jail, separating him from his dog that he couldn't get qualified as a service animal because he didn't have the money or the resources to do that. The judges usually granted JH a personal recognizance bond. And then hopefully they prayed that he would get a public defender. And their prayers were answered by me. When I came in to make sure that when JH was in custody, that when he was quickly out of custody, I could continue to represent him. And when I first met JH in custody, he told me the drones are following me everywhere. There's a chip in my brain. The CIA is tracking my movements. That day in the park, the cops, they tackled me, but I was running from the government. The government was coming for me and everything I own because I know sensitive information. And he said this with such conviction in his eyes and his voice. And I said, I'm sorry you're going through that. Let's talk about how it's not fair to have you be prosecuted through the system and what it means when I say I want to get you evaluated by a doctor to help fight and say it's not fair to put this man through the criminal justice system and keep him in custody. And he agreed. We built that trust. And building that trust was really important for when I filed those competency motions, asked for out-of-custody evaluations, and tried to get him set up with one of two programs that the Monte Vista County has. One of them is the Bridges program, where it's one person, and that's it. Because the Bridges program was like, oh, it's a small area, you only need one person. Not realizing that a lot of these smaller communities probably have the most people with mental health disabilities, and that is too much on one person. So I would get them set up with that, get them set up through behavioral health group. Bridges and behavioral health group would work on transportation issues and medication, but the rest was on me because I didn't have a lovely social worker yet, and I needed one. So it was my job to step up as the social worker for my client, getting into the courtroom every time we get a competency evaluation saying that, you know, you can't prosecute this guy. He's not gonna be restored to his competency. It's just not gonna happen. We can keep evaluating him and we can keep doing the statutory limit of evaluations until you have to mandatorily dismiss. That can be up to 2.5 years. Plus his JH's ex-girlfriend keeps calling the cops on him while he's out of custody, so he keeps picking up new cases because the Monte Vista Police Department doesn't know what else to do, and it is frustrating, and you have to spend a lot of time with these clients building their trust. So it was a lot of me not only explaining how statutes work to the DAs and the judges. We say DAs in Colorado and in Bear, so prosecutors is what I mean. And being like, you can't keep prosecuting this guy. And I'll get back to JH in a minute, but right now I want to talk about the services that MAC provides to the panel attorneys who have clients like JH. So what I can talk about mainly is what I think are the 5 most important things that we do. We offer a lot more services for the attorneys, so feel free to ask me throughout the next 2 days what more specifics we have, and I'm happy to get into detail with that. But one thing we do is we determine if there is a competency issue. Now, I think competency is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to mental health issues with clients. Some of them are competent, but my God, do they have a lot of anxiety, right? So because of that, an attorney can get overwhelmed and confused and be like, should I comp this person? It's like, no. You just need to take a deep breath with them, and let's talk about how we communicate with clients with an anxiety disorder or some PTSD. So we can be a great soundboard for those attorneys about why you shouldn't file competency motions and why you should file competency motions. And we'll help with assistance to referrals to specialty courts. Now, Bexar County has a couple. We have a mental health court, we have a DWI court, a drug court, a change court. I'm sure I'm missing a few. Because we're a bigger urban jurisdiction, we can have a lot of those specialty courts, and we can get our clients through those regardless of competency or not. They don't have to be comped to be referred to specialty courts. If they're veterans, there's a veterans court. We can help guide to which program your client needs and which court's gonna give them the most out of it, and can also help with things like housing and therapeutic intervention. There's also assessment of community resources for the clients, and not just what's the court-ordered stuff, but other programs that we may know about in the community that we can help get your clients set up with and make sure that it's the right fit for them so we're not in a position of reoffending. We can help build that trust with your client to sign the HIPAA release forms and all those forms you need to sign to get their background information from school records to medical records. That's really scary for a client to sign and see an attorney who they've hardly met and they have to trust with their liberty. So we'll help with that too and make sure those requests are coming in timely, because that can also prolong a case that doesn't need to be prolonged. And mitigation, which is one of my favorite things to do as an attorney. It's the one opportunity you get to really tell your client's side of the story and give them the court context. We can help create what I like to call a mitigation packet with getting all of these relevant records, writing a sentencing memo, working with the social worker and the case manager to help you either in a sentencing memo, put in these things really well, or something you can look at as like a bullet point to say to the court when your client is about to be sentenced. So we can help with strong, effective advocacy. So now I'm going to go back to JH. So this was probably like 7 months into my representation. We're at competency evaluation number 2. I have all of his previous competency evaluations from years past. We're still doing these competency evaluations. Incompetent to proceed, can't be adjudicated, can't be restored. You know, his brain cells just aren't going to magically grow back and he becomes competent. That's just not where he's at. So in Monte Vista County, we had these rotating DAs. We never had the same DA. They could never keep someone. So this is like the 3rd new district attorney I'm talking to. And at this point, I'm like, F it, we're going up to the bench. So we go up to the bench with the judge. And the judge, she's been that judge for a very long time in that county. She used to be a public defender in that county. Everyone knows her. And I'm saying what my mitigation is to the DA, to the judge, off the record before we call up the case. And the judge looks at me going, I 100% agree with you, Ms. Srivastava, but, you know, that's not going to stop Monte Vista Police Department from bring him in. That's not going to stop his ex-girlfriend from continuing to call the cops. Like, I'm going to dismiss. I agree. I think statutorily I can dismiss. If the DAs want to make the motion to dismiss, I will grant it, hinting to the DAs, you should dismiss today. And they're like, yes, judge, whatever you want, judge. And I'm like, okay. And so the judge looks at me for an answer on how do I get them to stop, you know, bringing JH in. And I say, Judge, this is the first time in out of all of his court settings where we actually have the crazy ex-girlfriend in the courtroom. She's here for her own criminal case, hilarious. We have the DA's office here, and you have the officers who arrested him because the officers are roughly the same. It's not that big of a police department. Say something. You're seen as a community leader, you have to say something. Because I can stand here as the defense attorney and say all the same things, but I don't need to say those things if we're just going to dismiss. I don't need to make that record. But you're the one with that gavel in that robe. You can say something. And boy, did she say something. And it was great. And I didn't see JH again through the system. JH is now in North Carolina, reconnected with family, with his lovely dog, who is very important. His dog would come to court, and he was the best dog in the whole world. And he's doing great. Because instead of what Kama said, which I really liked, and I wrote this down, was we were done getting him through the justice system, but we were getting him out of the justice system. So we avoided adding more convictions to his record that would have prevented him from getting resources. And his recidivism rate, down. Reoffense rate, down. He's not even a problem in Monte Vista anymore because a judge decided to make a statement based on the litigation that you do as an attorney. And that is an investment to the community because you're teaching the community that people with mental health disabilities, disorder, IDD, schizophrenia, are not necessarily criminals, but they're people who need different resources. And as an attorney, what I would like to provide for our panel attorneys and for any attorney who needs the assistance is to do that type of effective advocacy that is more behind the scenes, but gets the job done with your client and build that trust with your social worker as well, so the clients see that there's this whole team behind them instead of just themselves with their chips in their brain.
Good.
Thank you, Nikki. That was a perfect lead into part two of this, with the goal of holistic mental health care in mind in public defense. So the counsel is assigned, a referral has been submitted, and it reaches your social worker or mental health department. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like when you have access to a mental health team and social worker case manager. My name is Lori. I am the social worker at the Bexar County MAC. So first step, interviewing and assessing the client's needs. That just looks like a conversation, right? You're going to sit one-on-one with the individual, do a full assessment, go through background information, education, mental health history, medication, really anything, the nuts and bolts of what could be important when you're looking at individualized care. Advocacy and support, that really can be anything from just providing a space to answer questions, help a client just kind of sort through what just happened, and then also trying to figure out a good service plan. So we can figure out, is a specialty court, mental health court, is there a competency issue or need that we need to be looking at? And we can sit down and kind of develop that together. It's really difficult when you're working in the judicial system that follows a pretty rigid structure. There's a lot that we can do, but there's a lot that we can't do. And when you consider mental health stuff, you really need that self-determination aspect. And so it's really just kind of getting together to figure out how we can get the client to engage in the treatment process. That's especially important when you're looking at specialty courts as an option as well, because that can be a 2-year-long process, and competency also. So you don't want to lose the client along the way. You need them, to work with you to help get all these things resolved. Linking appropriate resources, that really can be anything from a job search, resume help, to applying for benefits, to housing and various treatment options. Monitoring client progress, we're able to sit one-on-one and check in. Sometimes that looks like weekly check-ins, sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's just, throughout the case to check in, make sure that needs are being met, and then conducting risk assessments. So we want to always make sure that our client's safe, and public safety as well. Keeping that in mind, the last thing that we would want is for any more harm to be done, whether that's to the client, their family, or the community. So we're going to conduct those risk assessments and take a look at the needs and make sure that we're planning for those things appropriately. When it comes to release and preparation, that's going to look like finding appropriate resources within the community, a bed at an inpatient treatment facility or outpatient, making sure that they are walking out of custody with a supply of medication, and that services won't just fall off once they do go back into their community and are reintegrated into their families. We also want to address systemic issues, really getting back to the root of some of those things that were coming up on the initial assessment, right? Is it food insecurity, safety, housing, family communication and dynamics? What is really going on, so that way, one, we can kind of go through this jail diversion process, but also prevent it from starting over. So, why case management? Nikki talked a lot about not having the resources of a social work and having to really dig down and do that work themselves as far as the attorney and appointed counsel goes. We really want to come alongside the appointed counsel and save time, save money. We can help bridge that gap and kind of be the glue between the entire judicial structure and especially the attorney-client relationship. Thank you. So we also want to provide and keep in mind service continuity as the client moves through the justice system. There's a lot of times where there's different probation officers that come in the mix, judges, you name it, all kinds of players and people within the system. And sometimes you might be the only face as the mental health worker that is walking alongside this client the entire way, from intake to discharge, and even after, right, providing that continuity of care. So it's really important because it builds that solid relationship and trust, which helps facilitate the relationship that the attorney is going to be building with the client. A lot of times we'll get calls. I just got a call from an attorney a week ago, and he met with a new client, and he said, Lori, I really don't know what's going on. I don't even know what language the client speaks. He spoke very low. I wasn't able to understand him. Can you meet with him and just figure something out? Okay, sure. So Bexar County, we have access to a language line. I don't know what language we need to ask for yet, but let's just start with a meeting. So really, that can look so many different ways and go down, but that's just one example of working together. Storytelling and mitigation. This is really important because we don't want to provide, or we're not providing justification, right? We are really just providing an explanation. How the heck did we get here? What happened? Kema had that beautiful slide about the public health and all the things that happened before somebody steps into the justice system to begin with, right? So we want to pull out all of that information and really just build the whole narrative to just explain and give context for some of the things that we need to consider as this case is moving forward. So we also, we want to encourage treatment, social reintegration. Case management enhances public safety because the more eyes you have on individuals, on their families, especially within the context of mental health, because a lot of times when you're talking about competency specifically and other diagnosis, you're going to have caretakers, right? So it's not just the individual client that you're working with. So there's really many different people, moms, dads, family members that step in to help guide the individual. So overall, public safety, trauma-informed approach. This is especially important when we go back to considering storytelling, mitigation, the initial assessment, gathering that information. Once you open the door to somebody's history, their lived experience, you really don't know how that can reharm somebody, bringing all of those things up. So we can walk alongside the council and help facilitate those conversations to try to do it in the best way possible to minimize, some of that shrapnel that can come up when we start digging through their history and background. Creating the better connection between attorneys and clients, helping clients feel supported. A lot of times clients just want to be heard, especially in a system that really doesn't ask them what they need or what they want. So it's really just giving them an opportunity to ask questions, tell their story and their side of it, and provide that safe space to, just let it out. And of course, all this goes back to the goal of reducing recidivism and relapse. Jail diversion, preventing the client from starting over at square one over and over and over. Whatever we can do to support the efforts to prevent that, we want to do it. So why is this all important to talk about today when you're talking about holistic defense? These are our numbers from our Bexar County MAC Mental Health Division for 2025, quarters 1 through 4. These numbers are people, right? They're real human lives, real experiences. They have moms, they have dads, they have children of their own. They have lives. And so when you're working with, you're looking at these interactions within the clients themselves, you're looking at non-client interactions, and that includes service providers, community partners, treatment facilities, really anyone, included in the judicial system as they move through specialty courts, judges. And then we had 75 times that we assisted the defense counsel with competency. So that includes anything from just a general question of what that process looks like, and then also walking alongside to where the evaluation is ordered, where it's completed, we get the results, what next, right? And then participating in that process to make sure that the restoration process is as quickly as possible, because if you don't have eyes on these sorts of things, it really can slip through the cracks and take much longer than necessary. Our mental health division also has the awesome opportunity to train and educate some of our appointed attorneys. Nikki talked about some of the ways that referrals come in. We do have a mental health wheel, which is something that we are very fortunate to have started in Bexar County, where as an individual goes through the booking process, depending on the answers to the mental health evaluations within the jail, it gets flagged, they send it to our office, we get a specialized and specially trained mental health attorney on it right away, and they automatically get our team looking at this from the very beginning. I mean, they haven't even fully completed the booking process, and we're taking a look at this. So, having the opportunity to share knowledge and information and train attorneys on, what to say, what questions to ask, how can we make this process easier, that's all a part of this as well. So Nikki mentioned her client, JH. All of this, it's important because we're talking about real human lives, and that equates to dollars and time, right? So I had a client who was going through the system. They were a repeat offender, drug possession. They were in their 50s, and they had never received treatment. Never, not once, not inpatient, not outpatient. They just didn't think that it was an option for them. We met, we did the evaluation, we got to know each other. We were able to meet regularly between their counsel, myself, the individual. And when I got pulled into the case, their counsel, who's actually quite good, they were working on a deal of 8 years. I'm sorry, let me back up. The charge that they had, because they were a repeat offender, they were looking at 20 to life. Right? Just for possession. Like, nothing violent had happened. They just had it in their possession, and they were a repeat offender. So when I got pulled in, their counsel was working on a deal for 8 years. And when you're 50 and you're looking at 20 to life, 8 years kind of sounds like a good deal. Well, after meeting with this client, getting to know his story, getting to learn about his family and his children, and all the things that he would be missing out on, plus thinking about pretty much, a lifetime of support from the county and our community and the burden that would place, we started looking around at options. I went to tour a facility in person because it's always good to know where you're sending people. And they had a spot for him. We, consulted with his counsel. They went and took it to the DA or prosecution. And they said, okay, it's worth a shot, right? Let's send him to treatment. So we got a release plan in place. Everything was good. Bexar County transported him over, and he was able to go through the program. It was a 90-day program. They helped focus on his spirituality, some of the things that he needed, substance use disorder, and really help lock in those resources to help build, we call it recovery capital, everything that you can kind of put in place in your life to prevent you from relapsing and starting over. So beautiful program. It's about 2 miles away from our county jail, and he was able to complete it. Graduated, certificate, back home with his family. So you think of stories like that, and it's, you can't help but go through these things to do what you can to really save lives, because 2 to 20, he ended up getting 8 years of probation and being allowed to go to treatment. And it made the world of difference to him, his family, his children. And so that's why we do what we do, and that's why these things are so important.
I need the clicker.
Did you turn this off?
Okay. We didn't get trained on how to do this ahead of time. That's me. Okay. Remind me to ask you about that program you just toured, because I'm going to learn. Okay, I'm Chris. Hi. I am with the North Hill Country Public Defender's Office, not to be confused with the Hill Country Public Defender's Office. We are north of Austin, well, one of our counties, north of Austin, about an hour and a half northwest, so out by the lake, if you are familiar with the state of Texas. Okay, so my agency, we have 5 counties in our juvenile judicial district, 4 counties in our adult judicial district, and my agency covers 3 counties in the judicial district. That's very hard to say. Burnett County has roughly 55,000 people. Llano County, roughly 23,000 people. Blanco County, roughly 13,000 people. And we cover over, not good at math, 3,000 miles, give or take. So just to give you a little bit of different perspective, I don't know who put my name on this list for this panel with a microphone, but sorry. And since this is being recorded, I can verify that I got permission from all of my county judges before I came up here, so they have blessed, because a couple of them are up for re-election. So, as you see, both of us have the same name. We have the same job. We have the same degree. But what I'm going to say is black and white, night and day different than what she's going to say, because she is in an urban county and I represent rural Texas, which is a vastly different conversation. And the difference in what we do depends on the area that you're serving, right? So my rural presentation is not going to be the same as if Far West came up here and presented on rural practice, not the same as Concho Valley would come up here and present on the same practice, because our resources are different and our demographics are different. So just to give you a little bit of perspective of where I'm coming from, how many people in here are from counties with population less than 100,000 people? Oh, a good portion of the room. So for the camera, that was about 6 people out of the whole room, which is fantastic. But I hope that something that I say can give a little bit of perspective. Even when we were prepping for this presentation, my cohort here, I shocked her because I'm going to do a wish list, and she was like, I can't believe you do what you do, how you do it, because the things that we wished we had, she has readily available. Okay, so I'm not a gardener, but just for illustration purposes, if you plant a garden and you have flowers and vegetables and weeds grow, and then you pull that weed at the top of the weed, what happens? It grows back, because why? You didn't get to the root of the problem. So that is the whole crux of social work. That is mental health forensic social work, and that is a very niche practice of social work, and that is what we do. So to serve our humans, we have 6 felony attorneys, 4 misdemeanor attorneys, and 5 support staff. And when I was hired in 2021, thank you TIDC, as a part of our expansion plan, the person that hired me said, I'm an attorney, you're a social worker, I know I have a job for you, but I don't know what that job is, and I don't know how to tell you how to do that job, and I don't know where to guide you for you to learn to do your job, I just need you to figure that out. Yes. That's a perfect opportunity for a social worker, especially a macro social worker. So we have a lot of opportunity for creativity where we are, a lot of opportunity for making permanent change, and that's really that is really our why. I'm not going to get up here and be negative about rural areas. You know the stereotypes. This is it. We do have limited resources. We do not have transportation. The whole give a client a bus pass, no, we don't, yeah, no. Programs outside of the jail, no, we don't have that either. I have 3 counties, 3 different power systems, 3 different county judges, 3 different sheriffs, 3 different very strong leadership skills. and 3 different ideas of how each county needs to be run across 2 LMHAs. So local mental health authorities. One of mine covers 9 counties, one of mine covers 19 counties. You can see how that would be a full-time job. But we're happy to create some change. We do have very high caseloads in rural areas. I know it's been said, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We do have low resources. We do have high need. But just as that's our reality, we also, I would think, a bigger opportunity to reshape how the mental health system and the criminal justice system, can't talk, intersect. And that's really what we want to focus on. We want to focus on the positive aspects of the areas that we serve. So that's where we're coming from. And I know we're short on time, so I will hurry. Okay, so how are we different? So I'm a mental health social worker, and when I get a referral from an attorney or a drop in my office from an attorney or a, hey, can you come with me, attorney, I don't know what I'm doing. This is all the things I'm screening for. I'm sitting in front of a human who's talking about, the attorney comes in and that's his initial interaction. So they're going to want to, okay, well, we need to talk about arraignment waiver and we need to talk about the facts of the case and what really happened and what's going on. I'm screening for, well, what happened to you? Where did you come from? If you are a foreign-speaking person, I need to stop this right now and get you an interpreter so that you actually understand what arraignment means. Can you even read and write? Are we even speaking? Are we even on the same page first of all, before we get to all the competency and 46C and 46, but all of that? We're screening for appropriateness and how the client can actually interact with us, human to human first, so that we can help navigate that with the client and alongside the client, whatever that looks like. As social workers, our value system, I learned this the hard way, is not the same as an attorney. Attorneys are fantastic at advocating for their clients and navigating the legal system and going through the criminal justice system and making sure they zealously defend their client. Social workers, we're taught to really focus. We have 9 big values. Dignity and worth of the person is one of them, and human relationships are another. So that's really what we excel in. Actually, that's what we're good at. To get our degrees, we even have to have internships very long that involve working with people. So really navigating the cultural aspect of where we are. The counties that I serve are very homogenous in their culture. We don't really have a lot of racial turmoil like other areas would be, but we do have a lot of classist turmoil where we are. So, like I said, my answers are going to be different than the majority of the counties. There's over 50%, I think, of the counties in Texas are rural. So this is really a valid conversation that we should be having and really examining what we do. Another big thing, what I'm screening people, and one that I'm really proud of with my attorneys, is we're really working on our vernacular. I am not schizophrenic Susie Q. I am not bipolar Susie Q. I am not crazy Susie Q. Oh, that's Susie Q. We've had her 4 times. She's crazy. No. We are a person who is suffering with signs and symptoms of mental illness. If we had a loved one in our family who was walking around with a broken leg and no cast, what would we do with that loved one? We would ask them to go to the doctor. Right? We would walk with them their leg's broken. We would help take them to go to the doctor to get a cast. The same is true with a person who is suffering with signs and symptoms of a mental illness or a drug addiction or both or some other developmental delay that hasn't been diagnosed or they haven't gotten services. Those are all of the things that we screen in our brain and that really provide the basis of what we do. Okay, I'm hurrying. All right, I said a wish list. Y'all gave me a microphone. It's recorded now. These are things that we're going to work for. Part of my role, I'm the lead social worker, and I have a caseworker under me. Again, thank you, TIDC. And so I handle, at the micro level, I handle felony clients, and I'm also a macro social worker. So we really examine communities. Thank you, JCMH. We have really used them as a resource to really examine We've done a youth sim mapping. We're about to apply for an adult sim mapping to really get a finer tune idea of what we do well in our area and what we need to focus on and where our money should go. So that's really what I do. Really hoping to achieve some of these, at least start a conversation or have a conversation to initiate some of these, because in our area, if you help one county, you're helping the region. All of our county judges are really good at working together. Our district judges, we all communicate and are really on the same page about what we need to do as a region. And like it was talked about before, maximizing those resources to really help everybody in the region. So this is my wish list that we would like to move forwards. Some urban counties might take advantage of these and take these for granted, but we don't have any of this yet. Yet is the key word. But I really would like to emphasize, if you are in a rural area, really look at how you can best use your staff to serve your people more holistically. We really try to take the holistic approach, and that was the whole reason of having social workers on the team. We complement the attorney to allow the attorney to stay in their legal lane, but we have to know just enough to be dangerous about the legal system, because competency is not mental health treatment. It is not. I'm sorry. It is a form of avenue that you can take in a legal context, but does not solve the problem long term. So really examine what your office needs, how you can best maximize your staff. I would suggest, if you don't have some sort of mental health advocate or social worker in your public defense or MAC office, really look at that. I heard that there's some money that could maybe help improve or expand some of those programs, just saying. But really want to use this as an opportunity to really look at our data, drive more towards improving our programs as a state. We tend to be very siloed in Texas, and so I really am pushing towards examining how we could do better from a data standpoint, from a programmatic management standpoint, and then the client ultimately will benefit from that, right? Okay, enough of the heavy. All right, so when we were practicing this, we were told to talk about a benefit, a good thing that happened with a client. And because we're rural social work, my favorite characters up here, I really wanted to use the picture of rolling our sleeves up, because everybody, all my rural counterparts in here, can really attest to the need for, we have fantastic people in our areas. We are really committed to multifaceted care. We wear multiple hats. We do multiple jobs because there really is nobody else to do them. And so we are the ones who are in a really great position to advocate for change. And so I do have a case, time, okay. I have 3 cases. I did mitigation for all of those cases. They were felony cases. 2 of them were 25 to life. We got all of those talked down. If you want to convert this into money, at the rate in our area is $85 per day for an inmate. We got all of those, 2 of them on probation, I think. And so we saved the state, I saved the state $1,706,375 for the cost of housing somebody who doesn't belong in jail. So just an opportunity. Oh, and I told one of my attorneys I would say this. I polled my attorneys because I said, I'm talking to attorneys and talking to funders. What is the benefit that you've seen for having a caseworker or a social worker in our office? And they told me that social workers are trained to extract information from people and they can navigate systems, where attorneys learn how to extract information from books. So there's really a different line of thinking, that both lines of thinking can really complement each other, and that's what I really want to emphasize. Okay, gospel that is Google, and then I'll be done. My favorite quote that I would love for everybody to take away, this is where creativity meets justice, community meets compassion, and one person can move the needle in a community. take that with you. Thank you so much for your time.